Hey YouTube, we're here with the Airbus A380. Brian Phillips here. Did a couple of touch-ups on some paint last night. Ran seams of CA around all the main surfaces and painted the control arms. I also trimmed off the tails on the tops and painted these. I repainted the red all around. The red was really slobby before. I also went ahead and put that cover in, glued these together and tied them up. Just little nitpicky things. You can see I've got my nose gear off. That's what we're going to work on now. I also covered this area up with CA and then painted it white, flat white, and then I came back later with gloss white and covered them. But as you can see, the tips are a lot cleaner now. And the red goes all the way around. So I'm going to probably paint blue at some point. So anyway, I came into the realization that, oh, and then the APU. I don't know if I talked about that. But yeah, I painted that on there. I just went and found drawings, and I've actually got a real port inside. So I didn't know if maybe that would help a little bit with cooling. I mean, it's not enough. And then I painted blue on that horn and trimmed it down. So I came to the conclusion that this landing gear, okay, stupidest looking mount ever, it's going to be held on by magnets. That means the first time it pops off, you're going to rip this cord off, potentially compromise your receiver. And I had everything tied together, and I'm like, you know what? This is not going to work. I'm going to end up having a problem. So I separated it off. I'm going to actually put this so it's pointed forward, because this actually kind of comes in here like that, and then that needs to go up into this area. But what I'm going to make is a quick detach. So the servo is attached by 3 magnets. Okay? So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. I've basically marked my servo so I know which way the control is going to go back. And I've got an arrow on it that tells me which direction it's going to go, because I intend to move this whole mechanism forward anyway. So my first step is I took these magnets. I buy these magnets. They're just cheapies. You can get them all over the world. This is a Hobby King part, but they're quite small. And I marked red and black, red and black, red and black. And then I stuck 2 of them down, and I've got my iron getting hot so that we can go ahead and do some soldering here shortly. We're going to basically interrupt the wire. We're going to interrupt the wire, and we're going to have magnets that will touch as this gets laid in here, like so. Boom. It's going to help to hold this on a little bit more, and it's also going to, of course, provide our electrical connection. Now, I'm really torn on whether or not I'm going to trust these magnets. I honestly don't know. So it makes me nervous. So my plan is to basically maybe do a little less dependence on this holding the thing on, and a little bit more dependence on having wires. That would be a small pigtail, so it's got a little bit of flexibility and movement, but that they're far enough apart that they can't ever touch. But if this were to separate, and then if they touch, who cares? They're going to be de-energized at that point. Because the idea is you want to protect the receiver from having a BEC short out. Okay. So this will be the first time I've ever done this with magnets. But there's a first time for everything, and this is the first time for this thing. So I've got this released. I undid the 2 screws so the servo can come out. Okay. And I'm just going to pull that through, because I didn't like having that wire in that orientation. So I'm just curious how bad it would be to actually flip the thing. And then I also thought about the possibility of just putting the stinking servo in. I mean, right there immediately, it makes a big difference. But the problem is then you won't have anywhere to go with your adapter, unless you did some changes to that. So I'm not sure if I'm going to fiddle with that, if maybe I'll just rebend this so it can be really close like that. But look how much nicer that is with that wire coming in. So anyway, just a couple of thoughts there. But in the meantime, I just am going to get this out of the way, because I need to eventually move this thing, and so I'm just going to stop waffling and do it now. I had thought about maybe just putting a bushing in here and then going ahead and just moving this forward, but I've decided against that at the moment for a variety of reasons. So for now, we're going to go ahead and push this out, and obviously they've used like a mucilage sort of type of glue in there, and so I'm going to show you how to defeat that so that you can get this out without destroying your foam. And then we kind of have to do this first so that we can locate everything. So we're basically just going to soak it with a bunch of this stuff. Top and bottom. Well, the top's probably not going to matter for us today because I can't get it in there. And all you're going to do is you're just going to basically work this thing out. And the way I usually do it is I just kind of defeat it by slowly letting that stuff soak in. And so you can even take a small screwdriver and just kind of make channels for it to go down into, because I mean this pocket's going to get covered up anyway, guys, but you don't want to destroy the whole piece, you know. Now the other thing you got to think about is how thick this is. Okay, the thickness is going to change when you go up here, but not by much, okay, because you're actually on a flat point there. If it does change a little, then this is just going to be pushed in a little higher. Okay, alright, so now I'm just going to take this screwdriver and just kind of work my way along. Try not to damage it any more than you have to. Okay, so now I'm pushing into this flat piece here, okay, just until it touches. Then you can walk around the corners and stuff. And eventually you'll get to the point where it kind of feels a little loose. Like it's starting to feel loose. So I can tell it's going to pop out. Just take your time and work that stuff out. And this is where you're going to find out if they use mucilage type of product or if they use like a CA or something like that. The other thing you can do is you can hold this up to light. It's got to be pretty intense light, and you can see if there's any spars in there. So I don't see any spars. You can try a knife, but knives are usually a little bit too aggressive. You end up cutting your fingers off. Okay, so now this part up here, I'll just carefully come up under it. This is where you want to kind of mitigate the damage as much as possible. There's going to be a little bit, and that's fine, but remember, you're trying to duplicate the hole exactly. It's going to be helpful to be able to see how the manufacturer made that hole, so we can recreate that here in a few minutes. And yes, I do have this tight because it helps to kind of push things in and out. Use the landing gear as a lever. Okay, so we're getting there. I can tell we're getting there. So now I'm going to go ahead and get a little more kicker in there. We're going to fill this up. Guys, simple tip. When you're filling this stuff, it runs like crazy. So put this thing up against your other bottle. You can run it right down the hose. You won't spill any. Let's try to do it too quick, which I usually do. And by the way, this stuff's all made by the same people. It's always, well, not all of it, but this is where the brand logo goes. So Hobby King's where I happen to buy it. But it's Accelerator, it's Instaset, and this is made by Bob Smith Industries. Okay, BSI. That's why when you go to my links and you see Bob Smith Industries, it won't always have a manufacturer on it. So, or not a distributor. So that's a distributor. Sorry, I meant to say that first time. Now we can get a little bit more going in there. Just let it work. Now if this were painted, you'd be compromising your paint as you do that too, so you'll need to make a decision if that's worthwhile or not. So now at some point I'm going to probably have to take this stupid thing off before I break it. So I might as well get that done now. Okay, so I'm going to pause it while I fight this thing. And as usual, 3 seconds after I paused it, I got the thing out without problem. So once it starts working, then that glue will debond. And that's also something you guys should take note of, because that could make for a pretty bad day if you have a bunch of kicker right next to mucilage on an important control surface or something like that. So just be careful how much of that stuff. I mean, you saw how much I used. It was a lot. It wasn't like I used one drip or something. I mean, I sprayed probably 10 sprays at least. And now the best idea is to get this crap off of here, the residue. And so you can do that with tons of different products, but sometimes it's easiest to just work it while it's got the kicker mixed in with it a little bit. See, it'll come off to where it's clean. Then you do want to wipe it down with alcohol, since you intentionally weaken the performance of the glue. So I already did one thing, and that was to measure the hole position I want this to be at. And so I know where the hole position is going to be, but I don't necessarily know where the rest of it's going to be. So now I need to take and go ahead and duplicate this exact hole, which shouldn't be a big deal at all. It's just a matter of tracing it on a piece of paper and then using a hot knife. So we'll go ahead and grab some paper and we'll get that trimmed out. Okay, so we got our paper here, and we're just going to do the old technique, the old standby. Looks like the kicker's already kind of marking it for us. Okay, so we've got the main size. Now from within that, we've got an inner size. Okay, so we'll just drop this down in here. We need it to be a little bit smaller yet. And this we'll just guess and check until we get it right. Just take an angle and have it until you get it close to where you need it. Remember, you're going to be trimming this out with kind of primitive style tools anyway. Not like you're 3D printing the hole. Alright, so now we can mark the end. Alright, cool. So now, remember, this is where the front of that is going to sit. So since I've already located this hole, actually it looks like I might have missed my location for the exact center, but it's hard to tell. Call me crazy, but that looks like it's off to my right side. I don't know what orientation in the plane would be. This is where you want to get picky. Okay, so this whole thing is exactly, let's call it 72.5. So 35 plus 2.5 divided by 2 would be 1 3/4. Holy crappers, man. That's pretty close, actually. I must have been a smart feller and measured off of here, huh? Okay, so that's 46 millimeters. And then let's do a corner to corner here. So I'm hitting the center of this, okay? So I'm taking the sharp end of this and I'm going right to the center. Okay, so we're at whatever that is. And we are not at whatever that is. So it is a little bit closer to this side. Okay, so we need to move it over just a touch. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's the end of the world if it's not perfectly exactly centered, but it's probably going to look better if it's centered. It's probably going to perform better. Now the other thing you really don't know is if this thing is centered, but let's just make the assumption that it's going to be centered for us. Again, primitive cut method is what we're going to be using here anyway. So now I want to center this, and that's where you just use a good eye. Good eye, mate. Sorry for anybody who says things like that. Now, there's a number of different easy ways to do this. I'm probably just going to pin it down today. I'm thinking that might be the easiest way. Nah, I'm just going to be lazy. I'm going to be cutting the top surface out anyway. So I'm going to trace it with a knife. Now this size we did is about right, so we can be pretty specific on this. Looks like I might need to come in just a hair. Trying to get the angle so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit. The working with this white foam, I've noticed it's sometimes quite difficult to demonstrate what's happening. Okay, so now that we've got that traced with the knife, I think I might actually try to cut it with a knife too, because I think my depth will be fine. I'll come away from the bend. Just go straight in. Normally I would want to do this with a hot knife, but I think for now it's cutting so good that not a big advantage to using the less controlled method. The heat, it can get away from you if you're not careful. I'm a pretty careful person, but I'm not magic. Now, what do you think we're going to do with this, guys? I'll give you a hint. It's not selling it on eBay. Now, for you folks, you'd have a better plug because you will not have necessarily cut that hole, but if you choose to cut a hole, that's also fine. I didn't make it all the way through, guys. That's what's going on there. Don't chop your fingers off because you're really close to where your fingers are going to be sitting. You know, it's weird. I used to get all nervous about cutting into my foam planes, but anymore it's kind of like expected. Yes. Okay, so now we obviously still have a little bit more to do, but we're going to try to sit this in there and see if it fits. Yeah, that's a pretty good fit. Pretty good fit. That was easy. Okay, so now this plug, obviously, guys, we're gonna we can clean it up a little if we want. Actually, it's a little tempting to take some foam and fill this hole right here, but I don't think we're even gonna worry about that. We're just gonna. Yes, we're gonna worry about it. I can't help myself, people. I really can't. It's a mistake. Is that good enough? I can't tell. I don't really know if it is. I keep a little thing of scrap here, and I find it to be very helpful, but it's also kind of annoying to have to sort through it, so I periodically dump it. And then I keep it, so I recycle it all. And not for the reasons that some of you would recycle. I just do it because it's what I want. Oh yeah, look at that, guys. That's pretty good. I can live with that. Now we'll have this recess. We'll have to deal with that somehow. And I've got some ideas. It's going to be super easy. So I think for now, you know, on something like this, we could mucilage this. Or we could CA to be a lot quicker. I got to think for a second. If I mucilage this, then I have to wait, and, well, but this might be a wear and tear item. You know what I'm going to do? No, I don't want to do that. Let's mucilage it. You know, I turned this soldering iron on a while ago, and that was probably not a very smart maneuver, because I've done nothing but clean it. It's kind of hard on your soldering iron, especially the tip. if you can get that goober ball off, then your mucilage will start coming out a little better. Jeez, it's getting hard to come out. This stuff is pretty old. It takes a long time to go through it. It's funny when you get one that's with an airplane and you use the one that comes with the airplane, it runs out like varnish or something. It's just crazy. Even brand new out of the box, that stuff is pretty thick compared to some of the other stuff that you can buy. So if you ever do get it, don't be surprised. It's not bad, it's just different product. It is a lot thinner than what I'm using right here because I accidentally didn't finish a tube and open the next tube. Ugh, that was a big mistake. You got to finish up your tube before you move on, people. Okay. Try not to get this stuff on you, it's a mess. But if you do, it's not the end of the world, it's just a mess. You use Kicker to take it off, we already know about that though. It's crazy how fast it becomes a kind of a huge mess though, so don't let it go. Alright, great, so we got our plug back in there now. And I'm going to get my hands cleaned up. Okay, so I spent some time and got most of that crazy amounts of mucilage off of there. If you don't know how to do that, you just kind of come into the sticky stuff and you just spin a Q-tip and it'll just walk it right out of there. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is we got to cut a small channel so that we can duplicate this size. And we've already kind of got our transfer here, so we can cut that out now. Probably wondering why I was doing that earlier, because now you can do this, which is the one way, or you can do it the even easier way, which is to take this and just stuff it in there. Okay, see how close I've got that? So it's right up next to the edge, guys. Okay. Make sure it's mostly centered. And we don't hardly need much material at all removed. So I think the easiest way would be to probably just do a knife mark. And the way we're going to remove this material is we're probably going to melt it so that it drops down. And that's it. And I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so I get a short piece of metal like this and I bring it over to a safe area. Make sure I'm not going to catch anything on fire above me. I get it nice and hot. And in this case I'll have to clean it. There must have been some debris on there. And I have an exhaust vent that I use to exhaust the gases out of the workshop through this weird hose that you hear bump my camera helmet all the time. Okay, so now we can remove more than we need to, but it's not going to be beneficial. It's not going to do us any good. So we're just going to take and, oh boy, that stuff is hard to melt. I remember that now. Well, stay away from the edge as much as you can, because you can push down a little bit with the actual landing gear. That's why we did the knife cut, guys, because that knife cut will give us a little separation. Okay? You can see we got a little bit of a relief now. So now we're just going to go and deepen it up a little bit. This is the 20 thousandths shim. 20 thousandths of an inch. That has nothing to do with the depth of this cut. It's just a tool that I used to get a bunch of at work. They'd give us one with every system we installed, and so I ended up with like 1 million of them. So if you're like me or many other hobbyists, you're going to use what you've got lying around. Even if there's something available that's better. I like the idea of using something that was otherwise garbage. Okay, so now you can kind of evaluate if you've got enough depth. I think we need just a touch more and then we should be good. Okay. I think I might have just gone a little bit too far on those two last pieces. Last touches. Okay, so we'll just slip that in there. See if we can recess it. Yeah, it's quite close. It looks like I might need just a little bit extra. But as you can see, that's going to bring that up to the front nose position, and then we'll fill this in here in a minute. But I think I'm going to take a little more material out on the front. We'll pause it while you get that last little bit. Okay, so we got a little bit more of that material removed. So let's drop this back in there. Now we're going to be shorting these landing gear next, after we get the magnetic portion of this system done, because we want to get the nose gear in place first. Jeez. I don't know why that gave me problems this time. It didn't give me problems before. I think part of it is we just have just a little bit more curve here than we did on the other spot. Okay, so there you have it. So we've moved that. So now we got to get it glued in. Yeah, I don't know that we're going to ever get that completely flat because we're just not quite as flat here. We're close. You know what? In fact, that makes me think I should probably go ahead and bring the back down so that we don't have the nose gear pointed forward. That would look stupid. So we're going to work on that for just a minute, and then we'll come right back to you because it's the same thing as we've been doing. Alright guys, so we've got the nose gear moved, and I wanted to show you that we've got it, of course, it's pretty much vertical now, which is what we want. And right now it's kind of hard to pop out because the thing isn't tight yet, and that's how you get your leverage to make the action to pull this out. So if you happen to do this mod, it's tricky to get it out until this is glued. Once it's glued, you should be okay. Now you'll notice there's this shelf here now, which is not a big deal. I don't think it looks bad, but we'll be painting stuff at some point anyway. And then in the meantime, I'm gonna glue up this surface and add some reinforcements, probably just foam still. Go ahead and turn that. And this is dry now. There's no more kicker on there, because the kicker will stop the mucilage from working well. But I'm still just going to give it one last quick clean up and just get any of this residue off that I can get off, because I want this thing to be in here pretty solid. Okay, so now the mucilage I'm just going to apply it to the surface here. And I'm just going to apply it to the edge, which doesn't look like I'm doing a very good job of it, but it's just part of it with this mucilage stuff. It's kind of ridiculous. Okay, so now that we've got that in there, we can go ahead and spread it. Okay, so once it's spread, we'll flip it over and spread it some more from the other side. And it does look like a spider web, but that's just the way it goes, I guess. Okay, so we're going to try not to get this on the action at all when we put it in. So we're going to come in the middle and then tip it down. Hopefully that'll prevent any of that getting into the moving parts. And it didn't totally prevent it from getting on the moving parts, but it was mostly prevented. Now this mucilage will actually go up the side like that, and it'll hold this thing in there. Just like that. So get it stuck all the way down so that the landing gear will end up being approximately square to the nose of the aircraft. And I'm actually going to go kind of heavy around the inside now. I'm going to put a bead of it, which I normally don't do beads like this, but I will on this project because this is kind of a critical thing. Now you can still defeat this with kicker, okay? So if you go to take this out or you want to take it out and try to do retracts later on, you could do that still. Alright, so there you have it. So now the next step is going to be get the servo in there, but I'm going to get cleaned up right now, and it looks like we're pretty much out of time on this video. I think we'll go ahead and extend it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the servo back in here. And now that we know where this is going to be permanently located, well, the other thing too you could do is you could actually trim this. I'm just going to round the edges by pushing it down. Son of a gun. I got into the mucilage. That's kind of annoying. Alright, so the servo, previously I scraped an arrow in here. Yep, there you go. And so that had this wire coming out like this. Well, that makes it really hard to exit. So if I can do it this way, then the compromise is that this tool that's used to extend down to where the servo is will have to be rebent. And I'm just trying to decide if I want to do that or not. It'd be nice because then that servo wire can come out neatly. There is another trick to it, but it doesn't always work, and that's to take the bottom off and then have the wire come out the other side. I think that might be easier than trying to redo this, but it'll give me the outcome I'm after. Just get a super small Phillips screwdriver. This one here says it's whatever that size is. I just know it's really small. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. This is pretty straightforward stuff. Sometimes it's better to just not mess with stuff, and other times it's worth the effort. And honestly, I feel like we're going to compromise less if something would go wrong with this. Okay, so you see how there's a little control module in there? No matter how many times you turn a screw past being undone, it never seems to want to release when you go to actually take it out. I never can understand why that is. Okay, so now I want you to take note of the direction. See, there's nothing up inside that lid. Nothing at all. Okay? So we can flip this cover over. That's going to allow us the ability to take the wire out the other side if the motor will clear. Okay? There's a variety of other ways still. Okay, so we're just kind of holding things together. And if you ever need to rotate a servo, you take and desolder this lead and that, and you flip them. And then you desolder one on the trim pot. There's 3 wires to go into that, and you'll just switch 2 of them. And that will make this servo rotate the opposite direction. That's a fancy little trick I learned many moons ago. Now I'm going to see if this will go without. See what's right there is, okay, we should be okay. I think we'll be fine. Just want to make sure this one wire doesn't get squished too much, because that's going to the motor. You know, pretty much any wire in any electronic assembly is doing something. So if you break it, it's not going to work right. Might still work some. So it's not like there's one that's in particular more important than the others. But on a DC electronic, I mean, usually the positive and negative are going to be the most you want to protect, because it can cause some vulnerabilities to the other parts of your electrical circuit. So you want to try to keep those from running into each other and stuff. And I'm sure there's probably a number of different ways you could do this that would work okay. So you see how it's not wanting to drop down now? Because that motor housing's in the way. So I'm just going to take and... Where the heck is my better pair? I don't know. I'm going to actually cut this with my better pair because they're sharper. Okay, so once you have that cut, then you can take your, thinner pliers, like something like this, and grab on and just tip it out. That usually works pretty decent. Okay, looks like we need just a little bit more. And for this, I'll use the X-Acto knife. A little bit on each side. Cool. There we go. So now we can have our wire exit the correct side. This servo is just not liking me right now. So we're gonna get it all reassembled now, starting with one of the screws that's square and straight onto the frame, because these are notoriously bad for going in at an angle. They won't line up, like this one's pointed over to the side. So you're gonna have to lift that up and get it straight before it's gonna go. And these screws are like little wood screws. They're just really long. So if you miss the hole, it'll just start biting into some other plastic member if you're not careful. So you do have to be a little bit proactive to try to get them lined up right. See, look. Nope, this one's just got a flat bottom. Some of them are pointy bottoms. It depends on the brand, I guess. Okay, so you see we'll have a nice stream relief on the cable then. One complication with that is if the motor would get hot, it could potentially melt the cable. But if the motor gets that hot, you're probably going to have something else fail too. If you're going to lose a servo, as much as I would like to say there's not a servo you want to lose, because there really isn't, but if I was going to lose a servo, this would absolutely be the servo to lose. I'd rather keep the rudder. I've already got differential thrust. Preferably, I don't want any of them to fail in like the full left or the full right position. Awesome. That's pretty cool stuff, guys. Nice. Okay, so now I've got my hot glue melted over schmia. So I'm just going to do one little drip there. And all that's going to do is just keep it from getting moisture down in there, because this is a landing gear servo for the steerable nose gear, of course. So you don't want to allow moisture penetration. So now our arrow will go the same way it did before, except our wire can exit the way it should have been. I gotta say, these planes, there's so many details in them, so it's like I sort of hate to beat up the Chinese companies that make these things because there's just so much stuff to get right. And for such a low price point, really, if you really kind of add up how much everything would cost if you did it yourself, at least here in North America. But, you know, it seems like a couple of these details you shouldn't get it wrong, but some people don't mind if wires are pulled tight and, you know, all jankety. I do. Okay, so that mucilage is getting a little annoying. It's wanting to come off every time I bump it. So I am going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to probably go ahead and cover it up. But I guess since I'm already started in this, I got to get the screws in. If somebody were motivated to, you could hypothetically put the servo in from the top. I believe it'll fit. And then these screws would go through and still do the same function here. So guys, these little projects take a lot of time. But when I buy a plane like this, I know it's a project plane. Like that de Havilland Vampire, you guys saw how much time I spent on that if you watch that series. It was crazy. You don't have to spend that much time to enjoy them, but I like the process of doing this to a certain extent. I would like better if I didn't have to do it and it just came exactly the way I want, but I realize that's not real practical to expect that. Okay, so you guys see what I'm kind of doing here? I'm using a Q-tip and it looks like I'm trying to clean it, but I'm not. I'm actually going to lay this cotton in there if it'll pull it off, but it doesn't seem like it's going to want to pull it off. So we'll just move the glue around a little bit. Then I'm going to walk around to get rid of the excess. And what I'm actually going to do is pretty simple. I'm going to cover it up with something. And I think maybe I should use foam just because it'll be the best option. So I'm going to get some and we'll come right back. Okay, so I basically just found some foam that was like one of those float stick things. I forget what they're called. And I just cut little triangles and stuck it around there. So now we've got just a little bit more lateral support, but it's got a lot of flexibility to it in case that ends up being the last straw, if you will. So the other thing is, since I have that, I can cut a groove in it, and I'll go ahead and use that to hold the servo wire. So we'll just cut there. We can run that servo wire down there to keep it away from the control arms and the action there. Alright, so the next step is going to be to separate. Well, the next step is actually going to be to tape this down to a certain extent. I don't want to tape it all the way back. I just want to tape it part of the way so I've got room to work with a pigtail. I'm thinking about using that fiber reinforced tape, but since this might end up being temporary, this piece, I'll just go with this standard, it's just regular packing tape, but it's nice and thick stuff. Jeez, where is the tip? Oh, there it is. Since this might be temporary, we'll just do that for now. If it works, then not a big deal. I don't really care that much. So now let's double check we have enough length to reach back before we do anything more, because if we can't reach, then we'll have to figure out for extension cords, because we obviously moved the landing gear up quite a bit. Looks like we're going to reach if we don't add or subtract a lot of extra length. Since this glue's not set up, it's really a pain in the neck to get this thing out right now. So that'll change to a certain extent. Whoa. But I think in the meantime, we'll probably go ahead and stick a piece of tape on there so that we don't damage anything. Okay. Just let that fall down there. Cool. Alright, great. Alright, so everything's in there now. So now we need to cut this wire. And what we're going to end up with is basically 3 wires that we need to attach to the magnets. We don't want to lose any length on this wire though. So I want this to be like that. So if there's length lost, it's lost on that end. Okay, these are going to get separated out pretty good. Okay. I'm just wondering if it might make better sense to do my red wire in the middle and I really want to keep the power in. I want to keep these far enough apart, since here's what's going to happen is that these are going to be tacked down like that. There's actually going to be a loose wire in there, so when you bring this in close contact, they're just going to go whoosh. That way if you have a bump, it's not going to detach. Because if this shifts while you're landing, you want it to keep touching. Or at least I do. I don't know about you. Can't speak for anybody else. And I didn't know which way the wires were going to end up, so what I'm doing is I'm stripping these leads back, and you see how I've got the red and the black side and the red and the black side. So the red's going to attach to the black side, so that has nothing to do with polarity of the electronics here, except for the fact that what we're going to do is we're going to actually have the red set up to attach opposite from the black. Now the signal is going to just be whatever the signal is, okay? I would rather tie the signal to ground than to high, but I guess honestly it's probably not going to make a big difference. There's only 2 polarities on the magnet, so it's not like there's 3 ways to do it, you know? So at one point or another there's going to be some vulnerability. Alright, so I'm going to get the iron going. Alright guys, so my iron decided it was going to stop working. That was always exciting. Okay, so I took my markings off of there too, because it's just going to be confusing at the moment. Until I figure out how I want to do this. So this is going to be quite awkward. I don't think there's a lot I can do about that. So basically what I'm going to do is I want to stick this to a metal object like a pair of pliers or forceps or something, and then I can solder the negative to the black, and then the negative on the other side will go to the red. Okay, so just it's going to be opposite, that way they stick together. But it's just super weird because the magnet wants to stick to your soldering iron too, so you have to kind of work fairly quick, I guess. It's just weird. Not used to having my work jump around like that. So stick it to the bigger surface and it does kind of help a little bit. Okay, so it's soldered and it's going to be cool in a second, but I don't want to get too excited. Yeah, it's pretty hot still. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some forceps to hang on to it. That'll help dissipate the heat as I do the project. Seems like it's pretty solid though. So then at some point we're going to glue these so that they're immobilized to the point where they couldn't touch together even if they tried to. So it's going to be like way over here probably, or something to that extent. Okay. Now on the other side, we're going to do the opposite. And I'm not sure how much, this is the first time, like I said, I've ever done this style of connection. I'm excited to see if it'll work. I suspect it will work fine. And if it doesn't work, then I'll just have to build a servo connection or resolder the wires together, which either way is not a big deal. So we're going to lay this out of the way. And we can tin these lines now. I believe this is a 30 watt iron, so it's not as aggressive as my other one. The other one's a 40 watt iron. This is a significantly more expensive iron. It's still Weller. It's a very good soldering iron, it's just not as powerful as the other ones, so it takes longer to warm up and all that stuff. Okay, so now on this one I soldered to the black side, so my brown wire needs to go to the to the red side, the opposite side on this workpiece. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to get the solder on there. Okay, let it heat up a little bit, and then I'm almost certain, I remember reading somewhere that magnets are adversely impacted by heat. So we'll have to see if that's true or not. So if they were, you would expect it would get weaker as it cools. It might get stronger again. Okay, so we have a connection point. So you bring them in close proximity, and then they can't help but connect, right? Oh, so I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, guys. The magnets aren't super intense or anything, and I think part of it is that the metal in the solder changes and redirects the magnetic field. But I guess we're gonna persist. If this doesn't work, then it's no big deal. You guys just get to watch me screw up, which is always fun too. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other three, and we'll come right back and let you see what it looks like. Okay, so I've got all the 6 magnets soldered on there, and I've got 2 pieces of packing tape holding this down, and then I poked a hole and stuck CA in there. So these are always going to be apart from one another but the inside half is now my concern, and how I'm going to keep the inside half from coming together. Okay, because this will be hooked up, and they're just not super strong. I mean, they're strong enough to hold, I think, but like I said, this servo is the one I would give up if I had to give one up, but I don't want to give any servos up if I can avoid it. Okay, so they definitely are strong enough to pull together, but then the behavior of the magnets is strange. See this one in particular. It's like it's lazy. It's like there's not enough going on there, which I don't really understand why that would be, because I think it's got to do with the solder, because the lead and tin must be stealing something from the magnetic strength and intensity. So what I thought was I'll grab some more magnets in the meantime. I do have some plastic here too. I was just it's like a Q-tip housing or something like that. And what I was going to do is I was going to make a little piece that's going to force these to stay apart. And so essentially that's going to position the wires in a ready position to be adapted to the other set. And that should also keep them in the right orientation so that we don't have to worry about them touching. So I'm going to get this taped up real quick. It's kind of hard to see. I picked a clear piece of plastic. That's nice. And I got a lip on there I want to cut off. Okay. So this will be somewhat flexible, but it's not going to be, like crazy flexible. And so now I can tape these in such a way that I'll be satisfied with the overall connection between the three, and it'll hopefully kind of keep things organized to where they can't separate. Let's make sure I got my gap right. Yeah, my gap's about right now. So I'm just gonna line those up, and that'll be my third point. Kind of got lucky on the middle one. I should have lined them all up first. Okay, so now when they come into close proximity, if this would happen to get upside down, it's not probably that big of a deal because the reverse polarity is going to be protected by this plastic. Okay? So they come into close contact. They really only work one way. But now the strength of the three magnets is working together to kind of hold everything in position. So I'll go ahead and trim this. Now, guys, this is a little bit of a weird project, I gotta admit. And I guess I can't say that I've never done a weird project here on YouTube, but if this works, it'd be pretty cool. But if it doesn't work, it could be a bit of a problem. So I'm still a little bit nervous about it myself. Even though I did the work and I trust the solder joints and everything, I still want this stuff to be solid, So I guess at this point, I'm probably going to CA some of these things in place and just really make it so that it's solid. And what I might do is I might move the signal wire over or do something so that when this comes undone, if it were to come into contact here, we'd have polarity, but we wouldn't have any signal. I don't think it's even going to attach, because like right now you got that plastic delaminating the two. The magnets are trying to hold together, but you're not going to get continuity. So, and I don't think that that's going to short out the system. It's just not going to run right because everything is hooked up backward, So then my other thought was I could actually move those back onto this and just have this so it like kind of falls down in place, instead of having these wires just dangling. Because I think that the dangling is going to cause these wires to weaken, and at very best we're going to break the solder joint. So regrettably, I'm thinking that's what's going to happen here. So, and only regrettably, because I have to do more work now. No, except that won't necessarily work, Yeah, it will. It might work. Well, I'm going to play with it. I'll bring this back to you in a minute, guys, because I don't want this thing to be 3 hours long. And I will show you exactly what I did. Okay, YouTube. I'm back. I want to show you why I'm not doing the magnets. Here's the first set. I got them to line up, but I didn't get them perfect. And everything seemed to be working. And then I realized that this isn't going to be strong enough to withstand the thing snapping in. It just breaks free, and it's actually quite difficult to get it lined up. So that was my first try. Then I came up with another ridiculous method. And it works really good. Like, it's nice and secure. This was on the servo on the receiver side, and this was on the landing gear side. But it turns out I'm not making enough contact to actually transmit the electricity. So that was a huge waste of time. Anyway, now I've got an even easier, more simple method. And what I started looking at was basically one of these connectors without any case on it. And so, of course, I would need to have, this style. And normally your extension cords are going to be like a male to a female. So technically these are both females. So I would need two females to go over to the Y splitter. And then I want to go underneath, well, in this case it'd actually be above the battery, and then come over here so that if it does rip off, it'll just detach the cable on its own. So that's what I'm working on right now. And sorry to let you guys down. That was a huge embarrassing failure. So I'm just going to solder these together. All three of these wires. And I found a couple of different ways to do this that works well. So basically, quick detach cables that would be capable of detaching themselves during an emergency detachment. It's tough when they're small like this, but that's kind of what I was going for, was just something that would detach itself. And I didn't want to use the magnets that were actually part of the frame or part of the body, for fear that they would pop free once in a while. And then I would lose control of the steerable nose gear. So anyway, I suppose if somebody had a little more experience practicing with that stuff, they could probably get it to work. Okay, folks, so we've got to get the end built on this side over here. Apologize for the abrupt ending there. Ran out of memory. Sorry about the whole magnet thing. That was a huge waste of time. But I'll never waste your time on purpose. So basically, these three wires need to become a male connector, which is confusing because, I don't know, it's kind of backward, it seems like, because the pins, of course, are what dictate whether it's a male or female connector. And this is a male connector. Okay, so it's got 3 pins in there. But I don't actually want to have the whole housing, because the housing makes it really hard to unplug then, right? So how do we remedy that? Well, we're just going to do it without this box. But I would like to have this back portion, possibly. So I'm trying to figure out if I maybe just should open one of these up. There's a way to pop this case off, and I haven't done it for a little bit, but if I recall, it's actually quite simple. I just don't want to stab myself and ruin my day. Okay, so because the choice is, it's either that or I just have the pins loose. And the pins loose would be fine, actually, but I think I'm going to be able to get it now. There's like a tab somewhere up there. I always forget where it is. I've released these things before. Well, now that the soldering iron's hot again, I can at least get my pins either installed, or I can get these 3 wires attached. That's one thing about this hobby boy, dealing with those afternoons where you spend 2 or 3 hours screwing around coming up with a solution that doesn't end up coming to fruition. It's pretty frustrating. But you learn more from screwing up than you do from getting it right, I guess. Well, you should. And that is true, by the way. That's why I'm so knowledgeable. And you guys are probably wondering, why aren't you just putting that male end right now in this spot? Well, the reason I'm not putting the male end here is because this is just an extension cord to reach up to where the receiver is. I lost a little bit of length on the connector, or on my wire, in the process of doing the magnets. Okay. Son of a gun. I like that other method of soldering, but once you've already tinned the wire, then you have to go to a different style. That's where you fold it over, you make a little hook. And I prefer the prior method, where you interlace all the conductors. I feel it achieves a better connection. Okay, so that's folded over. Okay, so we got a good solid connection now. I wonder how much shorter my videos would be if my phone would autofocus. I know they'd be a lot less frustrating for me. Boy, I left a pretty nasty sharp spot on that one too, guys. That's not so good. Okay, so I don't know if you guys understood what I was talking about there, but interlacing these things like that, it's gonna really maximize the surface area of your solder joint. The electrons in an electrical connection, the electrons are said to flow on the outside edge of the wire. And that would speak to the individual strands, of course. Oh, dang it. Must have enough weight to drop it down. So if you have a solder joint where they're interlaced like that, and you have a potentially a little bit more electrically sound connection, but you do lose a little bit of mechanical strength. So basically, the nose gear's moved on this plane now. It's moved forward, which is going to help a lot with looks. And as soon as we get this wire switched over, we can test to ensure that we have good movement and relatively easy disconnection, which is going to help to ensure that if we ever lose those magnetic covers, or the magnetic cover, the singular magnetic cover, then we won't have to worry about ripping all our wiring out of our receiver or damaging something, hypothetically. Okay. Alright, so this I wanted to drop underneath the battery tray. So I'm going to run that underneath, which should give me plenty of length there. Just wanted to make sure I was going to be good. Now that I've got that done, I can actually glue that back in with the others if I want to. Because when this wing goes back on, then that kind of tucks up there. Oh no, that's right. I'm just thinking out loud. This wire is going to tuck. We'll revisit that. We may have to adjust that a little bit later. But for now, then, the challenge becomes, how do we handle these? Do we go ahead and put on the individual male connectors like this? Which would allow us the ability to plug in. Or do we just go ahead and slap one of these on there? Or do we try to take this thing out? I don't know. I'm going to try to release this first. I'm going to get it too. I'm just slightly more persistent than most machinery. Come on. Get out. Yeah, it's breaking on me. This isn't going to do me any good, so let's do this as an exploratory search. Oh, this is a different type of connector. Okay, well, that answers that question. A different type of connector than the type that I've built in the past, which would be like these ones. And these ones do have a different style, if I recall. Let's see if I can find one. Okay, so you have the male and female, the different styles. And these ones are the ones that hold the, just like that, they go in there. So we could hypothetically use this to receive our pins. So that's what we're going to do. These pins were actually from a different size, a different style. So I might actually want to have a little extra length on this. I'm just double checking something real quick. Yeah, everything fits okay. But if those are different style, I don't think I can even use that cable. I'll have to build on this style. It's probably a good thing I checked on that. Okay, so I know you guys have heard me mention that I'm not a big fan of using these things to crimp on these ends, and I am not. But we're going to do it today. So, first things first, you get your work where you can reach. Okay. There's two sizes, one's small, one's big. Okay. So you stick this in and you can get it started. Now I usually take them off of the tabs, but I'm sure some people do it a little bit different. I actually need to get another pair of these things, the kind without the two-stage. This has a front and a back, and you can do this as one crimp. I don't like that. Okay, so I'm going into the bigger one, getting it started. Now you could hypothetically go ahead and slide the wire in now. I'm going to release it. There's a release here. It's kind of awkward to get it to go. Okay, so I've started crimping it down. And I've just found it's a lot easier to do that, where you start the crimp and then you leave it. And you come back. Dang it. It's so annoying though, because if you make a mistake, you've got to unlatch it. Like, I don't understand why the ratchet is helpful, to be perfectly honest. I think it's just a pain in the butt is what it is. Okay, so then that bites the connector down. Then we have to do the smaller one. Okay, so there's one pin. And what we're going to be doing is we'll be hooking it up. Let's just verify this is the same as our other cable, which it's should be the same. Yep, it's the same. So as we build our adapter, we can build it so that it's lined up correctly. Okay, so that pin goes in there. Doesn't give us any problems. So it's the brown wire. Looks like the brown wire would normally go on the right side. Okay. Oops, I put that in upside down. So now I just have to kind of lift this tab up and pull it back out. Ah, dang it. Come on now. Okay, so I just pushed it with my other tool and it popped it out. And now that's supposed to go this way, guys. Just want to make sure I'm lining it up the same as a conventional plug, so we don't cause this thing to get hooked up backward on accident. Okay, so now that's in there. We got a solid connection. So now we do the other two wires, and it's kind of hard to film this, so I'm just going to do that and come right back. Alright guys, so we got the cable built, and of course I screwed up a little bit on this last one, so I had to snip it off, and then you see what happens. That's why I hate building these stupid things. But anyway, there's an easy way to remedy that, and that is if you just take and give it a twist, you can make the cables look nice. Okay, just like that. And then you have an even pull on the cables as well. So that's one way you can handle that, and you can actually bring this back as far as you want. But in my case, I kind of want it to be up to the top. And I actually kind of want to stick this down into a little puddle of glue. Now normally I don't want the cable connector to be glued like this, but I want it immobilized so that there's no damage to the servo, and it definitively disconnects from the plane in the event of this fixture coming off. Okay, so we're just going to use a little bit of hot glue, and I'm using hot glue directly on the foam, but I'm going to do one step extra just to protect the foam because it's hot. You don't want to melt the foam. And that's to stick it on a screwdriver. And then you can get that bed of glue about where you want it. And then the screwdriver will cool down the glue. You can just peel it back like that. And it works really nice. I did the same thing here, guys. I don't think it was pictured. I don't think I videoed that because it was during my extravaganza earlier. You can see it leaves that little texture. I used this little Craftsman screwdriver. So I put a little plug of foam into that hole in hopes that I will avoid the inevitable road spray getting up in there. This is just a roll of foam. It worked really nice to hold on to this thing for me while I've been working. Okay, so if this isn't, you know, invulnerable to ripping free, and then I just have a little strip of warm hot glue run down this area here, and I mostly this is just for looks now. The only thing I might have screwed up there is I think I kind of glued that down the wrong side. I think I might have glued it. Yeah, I think I need to flip it. So here's the other reason why I like the hot glue. Is because you can flip it. You can flip it around and change things without any problems. So it's kind of a semi-permanent solution. And if you wanted to peel this off, you could get that 100% out of there. Of course, I'm not going to get it 100% out. I'm going to put some more glue in there anyway. But I just wanted to show you it is possible to use the hot glue straight on the foam. Now you can pipe it right on there if you don't mind melting the foam. You will melt it a little bit. It's not like it's going to fall in 3 pieces on you. You'll just have a little recess there. So that time I'll just show you the other method where you just scrape it on. So I did have a funny thing happen when I was doing my obnoxious project with the magnets, and I was working with this stuff because I was trying to glue the magnets on, and I had the kicker and everything, you know, and I ended up gluing this bottle to this thumb and the magnet to my other thumbs. I had to get my wife to help me unglue myself. It was somewhat hilarious. The camera decided it was going to stop filming, which is really annoying. I apologize for that, guys. So where we left off, I was just getting done with this connection point, and I ended up putting in this piece of foam to receive the plug so that I could do it with one hand, just because it's hard to do both at the same time. Because Because what was happening is I was just holding on this little chunk of wire. And I just want to show you, if the thing breaks off, right? If this landing gear breaks off, there'll probably be some damage, but let's suppose it breaks off, right? That's the whole idea, is that we'll break away without damaging anything but the stuff that breaks away, okay? So that's the rationale there, and I think it's going to work well. But also I wanted to show you the nose gear working with the rudder. And that was the other thing I did at the end of the video. So I guess we got now remember, we're upside down. So when I turn the plane to the right, it goes to the right with the rudder and the nose gear. And when I turn it to the left, it turns to the left with the rudder and the nose gear. Okay, now throttle cuts on. Now when throttle cuts off, it's going to blow here. These two engines are going to blow, which is going to turn us to that way. Okay. Now when throttle's on, okay. So that's how that works, guys. I also decided to tie in some rudder. I think I did 20% rudder. Whoops. Aileron to rudder is 15% right now, and it's just set to on. When I do flaps later on, then that will likely change a little bit. So that was what you missed. I'm sorry that you missed it. Guys, we got everything put together on the landing gear. You can see that nose gear is moved up to the front. Touch up jobs here and there. The APU, you can see that a little better. This is what the cover looks like when it's on. I use a drill to put it on because it takes forever to screw those long screws in. There's like a machine screw that looks like a wood screw. That's the stock landing gear configuration there. And then this is the moved up configuration. Obviously that's steerable nose gear. So we're going to flip that over and give you a shot with it upright. Alright guys. Here's your airliner. Airbus A380. Two main projects left before the maiden. And that would be redoing the windshield, reshaping the nose a little bit. Got the landing gear moved. Makes a big difference between that and those back there. These ones aren't as critical, but it still makes a big difference. And then out here, these covers just really helps with the scale appearance. And then just cleaning things up. The engine nacelles are supposed to be canted like this. So someday I might try to pull those off and do that. And then the next thing is to shorten the nose gear to bring it down, and shorten the mains so that the mains are also shorter, which is going to mean that I'm going to be closer to the ground with my nacelles. I'll just have to make good landings. Thanks for sticking in there, guys.